Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be showing you how to clean your Mercury 25 carburetor and get your motor running right. So these are all the tools that you'll need for this repair. You'll need a socket wrench, an extension, an 8mm socket, and a 10mm socket, a 13mm wrench, a 5/8 wrench, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a flathead screwdriver. So let's get right into the repair. Now jumping right into the motor, you just pop the latch right here and pop off the cover. Once putting away the cover somewhere where it's not going to fall or get damaged, you want to check out the internals of your outboard motor. Make sure you have everything that you'll need to have it running and it's not missing any pieces. To begin pulling off the carburetor, what I always like to start to do is pull off this pin right here. Once you pull off that pin, you'll want to take out this screw, which should be screwed in, but this one was not. This will be able to pull out these two screws, which are 8mm. Once removing these two bolts and loosening them all the way, you're able to take off this cover, which then loosens this puller arm. Move that, you are able to pop up this link here, which just pops up with a simple click. You should just be able to wiggle this out of there, side to the side. Once setting that aside, you may or may not have a starter, depending on your model, which this one does, which is just two 10mm bolts. Once setting aside those two 10mm bolts, you should be able to pull this and you have access to this 10mm connection. Once broken free, you should be able to take off this whole nut and pop off the connection. Once taken off, you can just hand tighten this up a little bit so it doesn't go anywhere. Now that your starter is removed, you have access to these two 13mm nuts on each side. Be aware of any linkages such as this when you're removing your nuts. After removing those two 13mm nuts, this fuel line should come off. So there might be a zip tie there sometimes, but in this case there's not. I'll be able to take this off with my two hands. Once that's removed, your carburetor should be able to come off. But now, if you have a remote controls motor, you'll have to take off these two screws to get access to this off so that you can pull out the carburetor fully. Now, with those two off, you'll be able to take off the carburetor. Where I like to start is removing this nut, which removes the whole bowl. Keep in mind that this nut is a 13mm. Once you've cracked that loose, it should be able to come off with these, and the bowl should just pop right off. Just put that aside for now, and put this in it. And pull off your float here. Inspect it, and under here you'll have a needle which should just drop out. You want to set these aside so you don't lose them. Now this is not necessary, but you can remove this screw and this whole assembly will come off. In my case, I removed the screw for full carb disassembly. Once you have that out and set aside, you want to start on this side, which is the fuel pump. These are just 5 Phillips head screws that come out and pull off this. And depending on if you want to replace your gaskets, I would be a little bit more careful. In my case, I'm not going to replace the gaskets as they look okay. Now this one I might check into a little bit, just pull it off and check if it's working alright. Now the way I like to do it is I like to use some carb and choke parts cleaner. Now you can use an ultrasonic cleaner, but unfortunately I don't have access to one, so this is the best way to get it done in a timely manner. While cleaning the carb with this stuff, I like to get into all these little holes in here and make sure that I'm getting fluid out of it and that it's all nice and clean inside, and I like to spray through and just see if something comes out of it, or if I need to use my pick and get in it, so I like to spray in all these and make sure. And also, you'll want to pull off this cover here with these 4 screws, as this is your primer pump, and when this pumps, it pumps up and it comes through, and then it sprays into your block so that you'll have a little extra easy starting. Now you can break it down further than pulling off these 4 screws, but for my case, I don't need to, and there's a little ball and a spring, and it's just, they go everywhere, so I'd rather not pull them off at this point in time. But here's your primer pump, and you'll have a bigger spring to hold on to. But now you'll have everything open so that you can clean it out and make sure that all the passages are clean. now we have this whole carburetor cleaned up, we can get ready for reassembly. But before that, I would like to say that I would remove this filter. It just screws on, righty tighty, lefty loosey. And I would also check out your fuel lines, make sure they're in good condition. I'm going to be replacing mine. I'm almost sure this is a 5/16 hose, which is pretty easy to find. Now on the bottom here, this is a 5/8 wrench, and it just comes apart. And you should just have fuel in it, so you'll want to properly dispose of this. Now once you've set down your housing, you can pull out your fuel filter and check out its condition. This one's not very dirty. And so once you do that, you want to get up in here, and what I like to do is spray some carb cleaner down in here. Just clean out all these passages, pull this off, and spray up in there, and then pull off these fuel lines. But you want to be very gentle because this is plastic, so this can break at any point in time, so you want to be very gentle when pulling off these hoses. Okay, so now that you have like everything on your carb off and you have it taken apart, you can replace your fuel line, which makes this a lot easier to do this process right here from here to here. So just measure out what piece you need and bring it up to here, and then wait till you put the carb back on before you replace this piece that goes from here down to the carburetor. Alright, so now that we have our new fuel line on and we have clamped it down, we can come back over here and start reassembling the carb. All you need to start with is I'd start where we came from, and let's put the fuel pump back on. So since we already have our gasket on, this is what the gasket looks like if you need to put yours on. Then you just start with putting this on right there. Then you get your other gasket. You kind of want to lay this like that and put a screw through it so that kind of lines it up with it, and then you have these little tabs right here, and that should be able to get you lined up. With 2 screws being on now, it kind of anchors it down, and you're able to put in the 3 extra screws. Now with your fuel pump back on, we can move over to the bowl and gasket assembly. So you want to start with your gasket going back in, and it just goes like that. Then you want to find that screw. So once you locate your screw and put this back in, you're able to screw it down and keep it tight again. Now with that in place, you should be able to put your needle back into the seat, and now you'll be able to put down the float. Now you can put your bowl on, make sure that you have nothing in it. Mine's very clean. You just set it back over top. Also check out this little orifice in here, make sure that's clean, make sure you get some cleaner in there, and just set that back in place and tighten it down with 13mm. Now you can put in your spring and put in your plunger. It just sits down in here. Now just like with the fuel pump, just get 2 screws to hold it down, and you'll be able to put the other 2 in. Now we get all the car parts back together, we'll be able to throw it back on the engine. Just before we do that, you want to go in here and check out your reed valves. Make sure you have no rust in them and that they're not hanging open and be a potential threat to the engine. So if you have a remote motor with a primer like this, you'll want to screw this down before attaching the carb onto the studs. With the plate installed, we'll be able to slide this back onto the studs here. After you slide the carb on, you want to slide on these nuts, but don't tighten down one at that time. Tighten one and just a little bit, and then finger tight the other, and you'll be able to make it easier on yourself because it will get lodged between the carb and right here. After you got the carb bolted down, now you can put on your new fuel line that goes from here to the carb. Alright, so once you get your fuel line done, you want to take your choke piece, and as you can see, you have a little hole here which lines up on the bottom of your carb bowl, and you just have to kind of push it in and kind of get it under there and get it under an angle, and you'll feel it pop up. You'll know you have it in whenever you have the holes lined up. Alright, so you want to take these 3 pieces, and it's okay if this falls off, but you'll want to put it in. Right, so once you slide this in just a little bit into there, it might take a second. Alright, so you want to slide this in, but you want to push this down all the way, or else when you pull this out, whenever you're trying to start it, it's not going to pull in and out because it's not lined up with the little slot in it. Now what you want to do is take this little horseshoe clip and just slide it in. Then you'll just screw in this screw so it stops whenever you try pulling it, so it doesn't pull fully out, and screw it off, and then you'll have to take this apart again. Alright, so you just want to pop this back into place where you got it out of from, and you want to grab your starter. Once you have it started, you just want to take off this nut that you put back on and put on the connection again. You'll just want to snug this down with your socket and slide this back in place. Now with it in place, you can put in your 2 bolts here and tighten them down. You can also pull out your choke knob here, which makes it easier to access this bolt right here. Perfect. Now once you get these 2 bolts snug down, you finally put your air box back on. Nice and tight, and you should be able to pull in and pull out and have no issues. Now we can throw back on the cap. And just like that, your Mercury 25 is now ready to go. Thank you all for watching. Have a good day.